Thanks for joining us on this latest episode of the True Claims Podcast. You know, one of the reasons I love doing this show is I learned so much about the legal process and how it works, and also about what goes into a successful personal injury claim. If you're like me and you're curious about some of those things, you can leave a comment down below and we might put it into our next show. For instance, if you have a question about obscure road laws or dirty tricks by the insurance industry or personal injury situations you want to discuss, leave them in the comments below. You might be a part of our next show. Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Johnson, and this is the latest episode of the True Claims Podcast, another fascinating case to discuss and dissect with you today. In March of 2024, a husband and a wife were in a Ford F-150 pickup, and they're traveling on a Forest Service road near the town of Carbonado. Something happened with the truck. Nobody's even to this day quite sure exactly what happened, but that truck smashed into a tree and then rolled over. And in the process of that happening, the airbags were deployed, and Michelle, the wife, the passenger in this particular situation, was severely hurt. Her hand was literally almost completely torn apart. She was airlifted to a hospital where they went over her injuries. And I want to bring in now Chris Davis, the founder of the Davis Law Group. Chris, her injuries were serious. This was a nasty one.
Oh, yeah. Anytime a person has to be airlifted to Harborview Medical Center, it's usually very serious.
So her hand was torn open.
So her hand was split between the middle finger and ring finger. It was split open down her palm. So very, very serious. And, you know, the injuries happened when the truck went off the road and then it rolled one or two times. And I think emergency responders were also concerned about a serious head injury as well.
So we mentioned that the airbags went off. Is it potential that the airbags caused the injury? Do we know what in the process of this accident actually caused it to happen?
Yeah, we don't know for sure. And is it possible for the airbags to cause injury? Yeah. I mean, that's one of the factors you have to accept with airbags. They're designed to keep people alive. And sometimes they will make the injury worse or create new injuries. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's a legal claim against the manufacturer of the airbag.
In any case, this kind of injury is going to impact her for the rest of her life, I'm guessing, a hand injury like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it happened on her dominant hand, so she's going to have lifelong issues with that.
So here's what's fascinating to me anyway, as a layman, about this case. So they had auto insurance, they had insurance. This couple, Michelle and her husband, why did they come to Davis Law Group if they had insurance? Why wouldn't they just file a claim with their insurance company?
Yeah, so this happens quite frequently, and a lot of times the couple will try to deal with their own insurance company, and at some point the insurance company will make what it calls a final offer. More often than not, it's not anywhere near what I would call a fair offer, and so they're stuck with either accepting that or going to an attorney. And thankfully, they came to us. And because of the hardball position that the insurance company was taking, it forced us to file a lawsuit on behalf of the wife against her husband.
That's fascinating to me. The way this law is set up, in order for them to receive what they should have coming to them, they had to sue each other. The wife sues the husband.
Yeah, I don't want to say that happens a lot, but occasionally it happens. And the reason that we have to file the lawsuit is really to force the insurance company to look at the claim in more detail. Because once we file a lawsuit, there's a trial date. The end result would be presenting the case before a jury, and the jury could award substantial damages, right? And the insurance company then is responsible for paying those damages. So the insurance company is going to want to mitigate or avoid the risk of a trial and instead settle with the claimant, or in this case, the wife.
Really interesting. Psychologically, that must be strange, a hurdle for couples to go over, right? Suing each other.
Yeah, when they come in, they don't like the idea, right? And I understand that. But when I explain to them kind of the mechanism and the big club that we need to force the insurance company to pay more, it always requires a lawsuit for that reason.
So it doesn't sound like the road was at fault, the Forest Service. It doesn't sound like anything that they could find went wrong with the truck. Hard to say if the driver was at fault. It's hard to recreate a situation like that. But does there even need to be fault in a case like this?
Yeah, there needs to be fault. There needs to be some negligence that has been committed. And so it was clear to us that the husband lost control of the truck, drove partially off the road and then down the embankment. And fortunately, they had enough insurance to pay for the extent of her injuries. So did we look at a possible claim against the federal government for the road issue? Yes, but those claims are very expensive to pursue. They're also much higher risk. So if we have an at-fault driver with enough insurance, we typically will want to stay that and only sue that particular entity, that person.
So then how do you go about determining damages in a case like this? You look at obviously the hand injury, the traumatic situation, or what their life is going to be like with is that all things you take into consideration?
Yeah, there's numerous factors. We look at the severity of the injury. We look at how much the medical bills cost. We sometimes will get an opinion from the doctor about long-term issues, long-term care. Sometimes we'll hire a physical therapist to conduct what we call a performance capacity evaluation that runs the person through various exercises where we can try to quantify the limitation of the injury, or in this case, her hand. With her, because it was her dominant side, and the fact that she worked, and the fact that she had hobbies and things that she liked to do, which she may not be able to do with the injured hand, all of that plays into a value of the claim. It comes down to the judgment call of the attorney on what the attorney feels is a fair claim. The insurance company will take a much lower value. And if we can't agree, then the case gets presented to a jury of 12 people to decide the case. So when we take on a case like this, we always prepare the case like it's going to go to trial, because I found by doing that actually increases the odds that a good settlement will be made.
So this was a hand injury. I'm curious about, oftentimes we'll hear about chest injuries or head injuries or back injuries. An extremity injury, the hands or the feet, is that a harder type of injury to get results on?
Yes and no. Yes, because the injury affects part of the body that one uses a lot. So obviously your dominant hand, and if that becomes impaired in some way, then we argue that is going to be a significant impact on the person's enjoyment of life, presently and in the future. That is primarily what we're looking at when we try to assess the value of the claim.
Let's talk a little bit about insurance, because you mentioned that they filed originally with their insurance company. The insurance company didn't give them what they and what eventually you thought was a fair offer. But in the end, their insurance company is the ones that end up paying, and they had quality insurance, didn't they?
Yeah, they had an umbrella policy in addition to the auto policy. I always advise my friends, family members to carry an umbrella policy for this reason. But the fact that they had an umbrella policy, I think, added an extra $1 to $2 million of coverage.
And is that what the settlement was, a couple million?
Yeah, we were able to get all of the insurance coverage that existed, which was $2 million.
Wow. And what kind of a person does it best behoove to get umbrella coverage? Should everybody get umbrella coverage?
Not everybody, but if you have assets that you want to protect, if you own your own home, if you have vacation properties, if you've built up a sizable nest egg, then having an umbrella will protect you if you end up getting sued, if you make a mistake and injure somebody. So it's always a good idea for certainly people in their 40s and 50s to have that type of coverage.
Let's talk about a little bit, Chris, some of the takeaways from this case. Every time we talk about one of these, it seems like there's a little list of things that we can tuck away and put in our heads and use down the line. In this situation, I mean, they're on a Forest Service road. What kind of things do you take into consideration, and what kinds of things become dangerous, when you're on those kind of roads versus, a highway or a freeway?
Yeah, so the analysis of a Forest Service road is going to be different than if they were on a regular traveled, like, state highway. So the first question is, what were they doing on the road, and did they have permission to be in the Forest Service road? Many of them are blocked off but people still use them to go camping or fishing or whatever. Secondly, the law when it comes to proving negligence on a Forest Service road is much harder than if it were a regular traveled highway. If there's a defect in the highway that's regularly traveled, that's a much easier case to prove than if it's a Forest Service road that's primarily dirt with pot marks and boulders and so forth, right? So we knew that if we could avoid pursuing a claim against the federal government, that would be the ideal thing to do.
Hypothetical for you. Let's say they had moved a barrier to get access to that road and knew they weren't supposed to be on the road. That isn't the case, but let's say that it was. Would the insurance company be off the hook then? You weren't even supposed to be on that road?
No, that would only affect a possible claim against the government for being on that particular road. Regardless of whether they had permission to be there or not, it was the husband's careless driving that caused the accident. So the policy is going to pay out for that.
We had talked earlier at the very beginning, the setup for this story, that she was airlifted to a hospital. Is that playing into the cost of this situation? Who pays for that?
Yeah, her insurance pays for that. But, we've had hundreds of cases where Harborview sends out a medevac to transport the person from wherever he or she is to the hospital. And Harborview is a Trauma 1 level center in the Northwest. And so we know anytime somebody is transferred by air to Harborview, the injuries have to be serious. So we knew right off the bat this is going to be a very serious injury. And we were hoping that there would be enough insurance coverage to pay for those damages. Unfortunately, there was in this case.
As always, really fascinating information from you, Chris. And we want to remind everybody out there that if you're interested in being sort of a part of this, you can leave a comment below and ask any questions that you have. Describe a situation you've been involved in, and who knows, we may end up answering it on a future episode. For now, though, that's it. He's Chris Davis. I'm Eric Johnson. This has been the latest episode of the True Claims Podcast. We'll see you next time. Eric Johnson here. I spent the last 30 years reporting on what you need to know, and now I've got something I think everyone could use. The Washington Accident Book Series offers a free legal guidebook on everything from car crashes to dog bites, so that you know what to expect after any kind of accident. Know your rights and how to avoid common mistakes after an accident by getting your free copy at WashingtonAccidentBooks.com.